You're listening to the Armada EW podcast with your host Thomas Withington at the controls. NATO called it the Foxbat, reaching speeds over Mach 2.8. The MiG-25 was a formidable aircraft. Under the nose was the equally formidable Smersh radar. Historian and author Mike Guardia has written about the aircraft and its radar in his new book Foxbat Tales, The MiG-25 in Combat. Mike, welcome to the podcast. What prompted you to write this book?
Thank you very much for having me on the show. I've long been interested in Cold War aviation. It's been almost a lifelong fascination for me. And of all the planes that the latter-day Soviet Union fielded, I took a particular interest in the MiG-25 simply as a function of how much of an alarm it sounded within the Western intelligence community and how, in many respects, it turned out to be something that Western analysts overestimated, yet still had a lot of redeeming features and became a reliable interceptor for not only the Eastern Bloc, but many of the Middle Eastern countries to which it was exported. And despite its ubiquity and despite the notoriety that the plane had, I was quite surprised that no one had yet written a book about the MiG-25 as a comprehensive combat history. And that's what really prompted me to start researching and start finding out as much about the plane as I could.
The aircraft certainly still seems to provoke mystery, intrigue. It is a real Cold War icon in many ways. How did you go about the research for that?
So I got my hands on a few Russian sources, also had a chance to take some first-hand accounts from some Indian pilots and quite a few pilots throughout the Middle East who were willing to give their stories and who had recorded their stories in other venues. And when I compiled that all together, along with some of the technical data, it really made for an interesting narrative, and one that I found I could weave together, putting all of the pilot stories together to make not only a combat history, but one that I could tell primarily from the first-person perspective.
What were the biggest surprises for you while doing the research and writing the book?
So the biggest surprise for me was really learning about all of the liabilities that the MiG-25 possessed. I knew, for instance, that it was a plane whose appearance prompted the development of the F-14 Tomcat and the F-15 Eagle, but I was heretofore unaware of just how mechanically troublesome the plane could be. And what surprised me was the fact that its only qualitative strength per se was its speed. And the speed is really what overshadowed a lot of the technical problems that the West would later discover the plane had, because here was a fighter who in the late 1960s could reach speeds in excess of Mach 3, and those airspeeds were unheard of for any tactical aircraft in either East or West. So finding out just how problematic the MiG-25 could be and how much of a liability it was in the air as a dogfighter, really a shock to me. And it was also a bit of a revelation for me to find out that despite these liabilities, it still performed its job as an interceptor incredibly well, and it was a reliable reconnaissance aircraft that many of the former Soviet republics used well into the 21st century.
The aircraft was famous for its speed and for its performance. It's arguably less well known, I guess, for its electronics.
A version of the MiG-25 was equipped with what was called the TL-25 Smersh, and it was a long-range radar that had a double-band wavelength. And a double-band wavelength emitting its electronic impulses out there made it impervious to jamming. And its radar was what made it such a powerful interceptor and what made it capable of engaging targets from beyond visual range. Its one drawback, though, was that despite its double-band wavelength and its invulnerability to electronic counter-warfare, is that the Smersh radar didn't have a look-down capability, and that limited its effectiveness against low-flying targets. And it's one of the things that prompted the Soviet Air Defense Forces, when they upgraded the MiG-25 into the MiG-31, to replace the Smersh radar with the new Zaslon radar system.
Just going back to the Smersh radar, were these aspects of the Smersh radar, were Western signals intelligence experts ever able to crack that?
Absolutely, they were. I think the biggest windfall to our signals intelligence community came in the fall of 1976 when the infamous pilot Viktor Belenko defected from the Soviet Union to Japan in his MiG-25. And when he landed at the Hakodate airport, his goal was to renounce his Soviet citizenship and renounce all things communism and say, okay, now that I'm here, here is this vaunted MiG-25 that I know you guys have been after for so long. And it gave Western intelligence experts a chance to deconstruct the plane and reverse engineer everything that was part of the onboard electronics suite. And the Smerch radar was one of the first things that they went after when they started deconstructing the plane, saying to themselves, okay, we want to find out how this radar works and how we can develop something comparable. And as a humorous aside, when they were deconstructing the radar and trying to put it back together, all the tests that they were doing on the radar system overwhelmed the capabilities of the radar, and the Americans ended up breaking it. And they tried to do some hasty repairs to the radar to try and obscure the fact that they had tampered with it. But when the Soviets got their plane back, they were checking out the onboard electronics, and they noticed that there were foreign fuses and foreign transistors that had been put into the radar. So it didn't take them long to figure out, okay, well, shoot, the Americans were tampering with this radar. They didn't know how to use it. They broke it, and they made these hasty repairs thinking that we would never notice. If you zoomed in close enough on the transistors, you could actually tell that they were manufactured in California.
Mike, it's been absolutely fascinating chatting to you today.
Thomas, thank you so much for having me on the show. It has been an absolute pleasure.
You can buy Foxbat Tales and Mike's other books online, and if this has whetted your appetite, why not visit his website at mikeguardia.com. For more electronic warfare news and analysis, visit armadainternational.com/electronic warfare. That's all for now. Thanks for listening.